Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. Today's shir should be for the full shalema of David Tzvi Hirsch ben Sarah Mira, Rafal Batzalel, Mordechai ben Chan Rezel, Malka Bela bat Shoshana Chava, Michael Shlomo ben Michal, and Yitzchak Isaac ben Michal. And also should be Lulu Nishmat Gershon ben Leib and Ephraim ben David Ruach Hashem Tenachim Gan Eden. I hope you all had a wonderful Purim Katan. It was nice that Purim Katan went into Shabbat as well, so it was like a double simcha. So today's parasha, I want to talk a little bit about Betzalel, and I want to talk a little bit about a certain theme that's running through this whole parasha, and it'll become evident as we go along. Okay, so we're talking now about the completion of the Mishkan. It's a very, very pivotal occasion. A lot of simcha here because this was really the antidote to the Egel HaZahav. The Klal Yisrael took on this amazing project. They could have just been so upset and depressed, and now they took on this. That's another thing. This isn't even on my notes, but if you think about it, when a person falls from grace, he's got two options. Either he just falls and stays there, or he gets up and gets on with something. So this is what Klal Yisrael did as a nation. They fell down, and they didn't stay down. Hashem gave them a beautiful mitzvah, the mitzvah of the Mishkan. So they took that mitzvah and they got involved, and you can see all of Klal Yisrael got involved in this amazing mitzvah. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention the corresponding shiurim on this week's parasha from previous years. Last year there was a shir called Nation United, and the year before that there was a shir called what was it called? Okay, it'll come to me in a minute. Oh, Headless Angels. That's right, Headless Angels. So Nation United and Headless Angels. Check those shiurim out. They should be on TorahAnytime.com. I'm just going to be adding on a couple of extra things here today, in addition to what I've said in previous years. Hopefully not too much is going to overlap. So this was a national project, and of course it raised the national spirit. Who was at the head of this project under Moshe Rabbeinu? Who was the project leader? Betzalel, who was the grandson of Hur, who died during the incident of the golden calf, and this was this was a reward from Hashem, because Hur gave up his life. Hashem said, your progeny will be in charge of this important project. So Betzalel, very fittingly, headed this project. And if we look at when Betzalel, a pasuk to do with Betzalel, in the beginning of Perek Lamed Vav, first pasuk says, "Va'asa Betzalel va'oleav v'chol ish chacham leiv asher natan Hashem chokhmah u'tvuna." Betzalel is the one who's going to be leading this whole project, together with somebody called Aholiav. We're going to talk about him in a minute. And I'd like to share with you an insight that I saw in the name of Betzalel, because he's named not in this particular pasuk, but he's named in full in this week's parasha. He's called Betzalel ben Uri ben Hur. Now, what does Betzalel mean? Betzalel is Betzael, which means in the shadow. Tzail is shadow, and then Aleph and Lamed is Hashem's name, Kel. So his name is in the shadow of God. And then his father's name was Uri, so he's called Betzalel ben Uri. So Uri comes from the word Ur. Ur means Or means light. Ur means fire. Or means light. So he's the shadow of Hashem, in the shadow of Hashem, and he's the son of Uri. So Uri is light. because he was the person who, as it were, created the domain in this world. Again, this is very difficult to understand. The domain in this world for Hashem's divine presence to rest. So this is why he's like making he's the shadow of Hashem. Hashem's presence comes down here and rests within the Mishkan, and son of light. Light, of course, means because he brought light to the world, the light of Hashem's Shekhinah. But there's a very strange introduction here to Bezalel, because it says here, where is it? I actually can't see it right now. Maybe Alex can help me out. It says the word Re'eh. Oh, maybe it is in that same pasuk. Let's have a look. It's Re'u, actually Re'u, based on the word pasuk Lamed. Ah, yes, here we go. Thank you, Alex. That's one of the advantages of having a chacham in this shiur. Vayomer Moshe el bnei Israel ru'u kara Hashem b'shem Bezalel ben Uri ben Hur. That's the pasuk I was looking for with his full name. So it says ru'u. See, Hashem has proclaimed by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur. What does it mean? See. Why does the full pasuk says Moshe said to Bnei Israel, see, Hashem has proclaimed. What do you mean see? What is the function of that word ru'u, which means see? So again, to understand this, we have to understand what type of person Bezalel was. Now, from memory, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was 15 at the time, 1-5. So he was not far off from his bar mitzvah, and not far off also from leaving Egypt. And he's told, you are the one who is going to undertake this very special project of Hashem. And him being a 15-year-old boy and a true Eved Hashem takes on the job, of course. But who was this man Bezalel? Not long before this, he was in Mitzrayim. He was a slave. Okay, the plagues took a year, but he was not a craftsman. He was not somebody who you would think, first of all, because of his tender age, second of all, because he was not long off from being in slavery, he was not the ideal person to be undertaking a project that requires tremendous craftsmanship. In fact, if you think about it, nobody within Klal Yisrael had any real skill. They weren't artisans. They weren't people who worked with gold or with metal. They worked with bricks, and they worked with straw, and they worked with cement, and the hands were chapped and dry and raw and rot and weather beaten and calluses and everything. These are not people who can work with gold and do stitching and sewing and all these types of crafts that require skill and delicate hands. These were slaves. So how come Bezalel, of all people, is taken on to be the project manager for this project? And the key to the answer to this question is in the word ru'u, see, because the word see also means to introspect. So a person has to look within himself and introspect and understand what his mission is in this life. Because a person, despite his better judgment, and I say this in a very general sense, I'm including myself as well, a person in this world won't know his own capabilities and won't know his own talents even if they hit him in the face. Bezalel was told, this is what you're going to be. He could have turned around with all, we could excuse him for this, to turn around and say, look, I'm a young boy. I don't know anything about building. I'm not an architect. I'm not an artisan. I'm not an uman. How will I be able to do this project? But what did he do? Nothing. He didn't say anything. He was given a job. He took on the job. As it happens, Hashem gave him such wisdom, such siyata d'shmaya, that he was able to oversee the project perfectly. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, he could have done it even by himself, without having a partner, who we mentioned before, Aholiab. Aholiab was his partner. He could have done it by himself. But for one reason or another, Hashem assigned him somebody to help him with this great task, and they did it together. So a person really, his main avodah in this world is to find out, and it could be a lifelong task, find out what we're supposed to do in this world, and what we're capable of. And many, many times, we don't even know what we're capable of. I'm going to mention this in a few minutes' time, Bezrat Hashem. How a person doesn't even know himself what he's capable of. And Bezalel was described in the Pasuk as being a Parnas Tov. A Parnas Tov means a good leader. We say the phrase Parnas Ador, the leader of the generation, or the sustainer of the generation. Why was Bezalel called a Parnas Tov? I would say call him Pikeach Tov, like a genius, or some other word which would describe his talent now Hashem gave him as a gift. Why is he called a good Parnas? So the answer to that is in the partner that I mentioned before, Aholiab, who was partnered with to do this project. So as we mentioned, Bezalel was endowed with so much chokhmah, so much wisdom, that he could have done this by himself. Now again, who could have excused him if he turned round to Moshe Rabbeinu, and indeed if he turned around to Hashem even, and turned around and said, look, Hashem, you've given me so much wisdom and intelligence. Why are you partnering me with somebody who's not on that level? I mean, is this somebody who's gonna help me make decisions? Am I going to be carrying him? Is he going to be like a burden? I can do this. This is something I can do with my eyes closed. Hashem, you gave me the wisdom. So surely I could do this by myself. Just give me the position of power, and I will delegate. I will make sure the job's done properly. I don't need a partner. Hashem gave him Aholiab, who in truth was not on the level of Bezalel, as a test to see, can you work with somebody? Can you have somebody with you who maybe you know he's not on your level? Are you going to be condescending to him, or are you going to include him? Are you going to make him feel special? Are you going to give him things to do and let him feel like he's a partner? Or are you going to make him feel like he's a dead weight and that you don't need him? And Bezalel passed this test with flying colours. He included Aholiab, and every time you see Bezalel is mentioned, I think more often than not is mentioned with Aholiab. Because he made him feel so special. He made him feel, you are such an important part of what we're doing here with the Mishkan. Even though he was not necessarily on the level of direct shaviyut, equality with Bezalel. This is an amazing, amazing mussar we get here. How many times have we been in a job or anything where the boss has said, look, I'm promoting this boy who has only been in the company for 6 months. I know you've been here for 10 years, and he's going to be your boss, or he's going to be your equal. Now, naturally, a person would feel slighted by this. We're not saying you shouldn't feel slighted. Sometimes it's a natural emotion. But what do you do with that emotion? Do you use that emotion as an axe to grind? And you're going to now make this fellow's life a misery? Make him feel that he's not wanted? And take out your angst and all your negative emotions on this poor fellow, or you're going to put aside your own feelings and come and include him and make him feel special, and don't patronize him and don't be condescending to him. That is the lesson that we learn from Bezalel. He was on a much higher madrega, but he never once, I think the word is pulled rank. He never pulled rank on Aholiav. It's very important. A person mustn't do this, that he makes somebody feel lower class. It's a lesson for every interaction that we have in life, whether it's work, whether it's social. It could be parents to children. It could be siblings. There's so many examples. You have to go home and think of your own examples. And take this lesson of Bezalel, who was called Paranas Tov because of this. And to accentuate the point we mentioned before about a person's capabilities, let's go back to Perek Lamed Vav, Perek 35, Pasuk Chaf Aleph. Vayavo kol ish asher nesa'o libo v'chol asher nadva rucho oto hevi atrumat Hashem. This is talking about the people who were assigned to help with the Mishkan. Again, remember, these people were not long off being slaves. So what do they call them? Every man whose heart inspired him to come. Inspired? His heart inspired? Should say everyone who had a capability, who had strong hands, who knew something maybe a little bit about organization, or had a flair for it. What does it mean here? Whose heart inspired him, whose spirit motivated him. Spirit motivated him? That isn't necessarily a prerequisite to take on a job of a craftsman. You're building a Mishkan. You need people with a great degree of talent. Even if they didn't have, maybe they could learn. What is this? They took on people whose spirit motivated them. These people who the Pasuk is talking about, they all had one thing in common. They were all ambitious. They all wanted to get on with the job. They were all motivated by a pure feeling of L'Shem Shamayim. They had no talent, at least not on paper. They had no skill. They were like, I think of a very crude example, like dustmen being given scalpels and told perform brain surgery. Now, a person could feel he's got a talent for one thing or another, but they're not necessarily brain surgeons. They're not necessarily. I mean, a brain surgeon would be a rubbish dustman, and a dustman would be a rubbish brain surgeon, and a rabbi would also be a rubbish brain surgeon. Yeah, don't ask me to go and perform complicated cardiology or brain surgery. Yeah, because as far as I know, it's not really my talent. Certainly, right here, right now, I wouldn't be able to do anything with a scalpel. Right? So, these people, we said already, they had no talent, at least on paper. But because of the ambition that they had, they wanted to help. They wanted to do the right thing. And Hashem also gave them, just like He gave Bezalel, although maybe not to the same degree, He gave them such a great degree of Siyata Dishmaya that they were able to do these things with ease. I think I mentioned once a while ago, there was many years ago, probably when I was a little boy, there was like a puppet series about a little boy who they made him into a spy. How did they make him into a spy? They gave him glasses, and these glasses had some sort of technology in them that they would feed into his brain the talents and the skills of the person he wanted to be. So he wanted to be a spy, he put on the glasses, he became a spy. He wanted to be, a marksman or a deep sea diver, they put on the glasses, then they made him into this thing. Automatically. He was a little kid. What can a little kid do? A little kid of 9, 10 years old. But he put on the glasses and straight into his brain, fed all the information, now he was a deep sea diver. And they got on with him. So lahavdil, could this be what was happening here? All they had was a pure ratzon, a pure will. And Hashem, as it were, put on the glasses. And he gave these people all the skills and the talents. And now they had what they needed to do. And if you look into the next Perek Lamed, before was Perek Lamed Hey, now we're on to Lamed Vav. Perek Lamed Vav, Pasuk Beit. Vayikra Moshe el Betzalel ve'el Oliav ve'el kol ish chacham leiv. What does it call these people? Chacham leiv. Wise-hearted. Those two words don't really go together. Because if a person is wise, where's the seat of wisdom? Seat of wisdom is in the brain. You should call somebody wise-headed, or wise-brained, or wise guy. I don't know what else to call him. But the leiv, that's the seat of the emotion. You don't have wisdom in the heart. The heart gives the hargasha, gives the feeling. What does it mean, wise-hearted? So with what I've just mentioned, it answers it perfectly. Because the wisdom, of course, never came from the heart, but the will to do the right thing came from the heart. Their hearts were in the right place. Their hearts inspired them to do the right thing. Therefore, the wisdom, as it were, came through the desire. The desire came through the heart. It's an amazing thing. So Hashem gave them the wisdom based on their own desire, which is an amazing, amazing thing. So maybe it's not too late to write off Rabbi Kalati from being a brain surgeon. Maybe if I really, really wanted to do it, and there was a real tzorech, there was a real need for it, maybe I'll get siyata d'shmaya. But let's not talk about that now, because before I get into complicated surgery, I want to tell you about a couple of incidents that happened to me personally of how I was made to do something that even I did not know I was capable of doing. A couple of years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago now, my wife and myself started a kehillah in Edgware called Shevet Yehuda. It was supposed to be a Sephardi kehillah. It had a specific purpose. It was for young people, young families. It was, there was going to be a lot of serious tefillah, no talking during the davening, and there was a lot of, we were going to do a lot of divrei Torah, and we had a lot of high and mighty plans. But we didn't want to do it off our own back. So we went, at least for the first initial year of starting, maybe even longer than that, we were under the guidance of Dayan Yonason Abraham of the London Based Inn, who happens to be my Rav. So, at one of these meetings, when we were actually quite far down the line, we got to the point where we were organising tefillot for the High Holy Days, for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and we were at a bit of a lack of where to get the certain people that we needed to do the tefillot and to do the various things. We needed a Bal Tefillah for Rosh Hashanah. That's not easy. You have to get somebody who knows what they're doing. They're going to have certain criteria. And one of the other jobs we needed was a Bal Tokeya, which is a person to blow the shofar. So at this meeting, apart from the Dayan and myself and my wife, there was the rabbi, who was Rabbi Karp, and David Dome was the gabbai at the time. So there was a few of us there at this meeting. So Dayan Abraham, we asked him, who should we get for this? And he made a suggestion. And then we said, what about Bal Tokeya? What about somebody to blow the shofar? So Dayan directed his eyes straight to me. He said, you do it. So I was shocked. I looked at the people around me. I said, Diane, I've never, at least successfully, I've never blown a shofar in my life. I haven't got the makeup. I don't know how to do it. He said, no, you're going to do it. And he said it once. He said it twice. And people looked at me as if to say, look, he's telling you you should do it, then you should do it. So I thought, what can I do? And he even lent me a shofar. I remember at the time he lent me he had a few shofarot. He went into his cupboard, he lent me a shofar. And at that point, I think it was a few weeks before, it was around about the time of the 3 weeks. And after the 3 weeks, my wife, myself, and the children, we went on a short holiday, and I took the shofar with me. And I remember standing in a field in the middle, it was Wales or somewhere, trying to blow the shofar, and I was getting very nervous. How am I going to do this? I can't get any sound out of it. But the Dayan says, and there's nobody else to do it. So, but makom ain't ish, when there's nobody to do the job, you've got to rise to the occasion. So I tried and I tried and I tried, and believe it or not, I really surprised myself. I managed to get a sound out of it. And even more amazing, I still, to this day, I don't know how I did it. I was, in fact, the Baal Tokea for that Rosh Hashanah, which is only a few weeks away. Now, of course, I didn't do it all by myself. Rabbi Karp went, and he exhaustively went through all the halachot with me, which was also very hard. But I ended up from being somebody who had no idea. I tell you, I struggled to know which end to blow. The wide end or the small end. I'm exaggerating, obviously. But, to put me with a shofar was like, again, putting me with a scalpel. What else am I going to, how am I going to do this? The Dayan said, you do it, and that was it. And it happened that year, and it happened the year afterwards, and the year afterwards as well. If I'm not mistaken, 3 years running, I think I did it. So there's something I never knew I could do. But somebody else told me. And that's very often a very good guideline for knowing what your skills and your talents are. To go to somebody who is somebody you trust, somebody who's a moreh derech, who's helping you along the way, or your Rav, or somebody who knows you, as they say, knows you better than you know yourself. It can be, in a way, it could be anybody. I'll tell you something else that just popped into my head. A little tiny, seemingly insignificant incident, which might, have some bearing on this. Last Friday, I was in the kosher shop doing the shopping, and it happens to be a shop that I go to every week, normally with my wife. So they know my wife and myself. They know us quite well there. And there's a worker in this shop called Christoph. So Christoph happens to be on the till, and I'm giving him all my stuff, and we finish. Before we get to the bill, he goes down, he takes a copy of the Hamadiyah, and he puts it in my basket. I said, Christoph, what are you doing? I said, why are you giving this paper? He says, no, you need this. I said, what do you mean? How do you know I didn't buy it already? How do you know I need it? He says, no, I know you haven't got it. I know that you always read this, and here. He put it in, and would you believe it, when I got home, my wife told me, trying to text you, don't forget to buy the Hamadiyah, because I haven't bought it already. So here's a simple example of something, even I didn't know what I needed to do. Somebody else had to come and tell me what I needed to do. So very often it can happen that you don't know yourself as well as other people know you. And we need help from these people. And they can help us. And here's the second story. The first story I told you was in Ruchniot. This is in Gashmiot. So a number of years ago now, probably 10 years, maybe 10 years plus, or around about the 10-year mark, let's say, when my wife and myself had just enrolled our children in Noam Primary School, which is a very excellent primary school, I should add, if you have children of that age. It's a wonderful, wonderful school. I highly recommend it if you're able to get in, because it's very competitive. We just, Baruch Hashem, enrolled our children in the school, and we were trying to get more involved in helping, being part of the Noam school system. So at that point, it was getting closer to the annual fundraising dinner. And what they decided that year, being a fledgling school and being probably the second or third fundraising dinner they'd ever had, they decided that that year they needed to have some sort of fundraising promotion, like a fundraising video or some sort of presentation they could show on the night to show the school, to show, where people's money is going. One of the people on the committee, whose name I shall mention because it's very, very big, as far as I'm concerned, very big compliment for her. Her name was Deborah Kashani. So she was friendly with my wife. She approached my wife, do you know anybody who would be able to, who we could get, like a company or somebody, to make this promotional video on a shoestring? Because we haven't got a huge budget. We need to make this, we want to show it at the dinner, and we believe it's going to increase the amount of donations on the evening. So my wife looks no further. She turns around to me, you're going to do it. I said, what do you mean? I don't even have a camera. I mean, I always had an interest in photography, but I mean, how are we going to, no, you're going to do it. Fine. Many years later, I listened to the Dayan. Maybe it was because at the time I listened to my wife. So what did we do? We borrowed a camera. We did lots of research. I got together with a friend of mine, Andrew Elishahoff, who I, grown up with, and we had already expressed an interest in photography and video through our former years. And we got together, and again, would you believe it? We made the video. Admittedly, it wasn't really of a high professional standard, but it stood us in good stead. And because of that, my wife and myself thought, you know what? Maybe you can do this for a living. Because at the time we'd come back from Israel, we didn't have a visible parnasa. I was an avreich, and it got to the stage where we were really looking to, we needed a parnasa. So we got into it. And without going into the whole story, that's when my wife and myself got into the photography and video business for weddings, and we did more. And Baruch Hashem, I think almost every year since that time we've done the video for Noam, for the fundraising dinner. And I think subsequently they've got a little bit better, but it's just amazing how a person can be thrust into something that he had no idea he had any talent or capability from. But Hashem will maneuver you into that position and show you and guide you and let you have contact with somebody who can shed a bit of light on what you're capable of. But there's a choice there. The choice is, are you going to do it or are you not going to do it? Are you going to stretch yourself or are you going to just not take the bait and just say, nah, this is not for me? Who says I can do it? What would the world be like without the fruits of the labor of the Ponevezher Rav, of the Bobov Rav, who both built incredible yeshivot in Eretz Yisrael and America, respectively? Could they have turned around and said, I'm not capable of this. I'm a Rebbe. I'm supposed to be sitting in yeshiva teaching boys. I have to go out and fundraise and organize to build yeshiva? Did the Ponevezher Rav ever say that? Did he ever say, I'm not capable, I can't do this? Other people said that. Other people pointed the finger at him and said, you're not capable, you haven't got the money, you're talking pipe dreams. That's not going to become reality. How's that going to happen? It's lunacy. Yeah, lunacy. You'll see what lunacy. Now you look at Ponevezher Yeshiva, and you look at all the amazing, incredible yeshivot, kolelim, mosdot, all over the world. Were they built by people who couldn't be bothered? They didn't have any flair for it. They didn't have any energy. They were not nediv libo, chacham lev. They were all chachmei lev. They spoke only from the heart. They had nothing on paper. They had no money. Perhaps even they had no talent. But each and every one of those holy people, and there's many people you can add into this list. Rabbi David Dryan, Gateshead, Sora Schneer, they had nothing on paper. But they were Chachmei Lev. Chacham Lev is the starting point. Without the Chacham Lev, nothing is going to go. You can be the greatest craftsman. You can be the greatest everything. You're not a Chacham Lev. You don't have the Ratzon from the heart. It's not going to work for you. Maybe it might work for you in the short term. But to do things like this, to break out of your comfort zone, to think outside of the box, that's a Chacham Lev. So with those two stories I told you, I think everyone has their own stories. You know what? Perhaps I'm going to throw this out to the public. Perhaps if there's anybody out there on TorahAnytime.com who's got a story, you don't have to tell me your name if you don't want to. Send me the story, and maybe we'll share these stories in coming weeks. People who have had no idea what they're capable of, and yet they've used their chokhmah, which comes from the heart, and they come up with things they had no idea they're capable of. So let's put this out. Write to me, and believe me, if we get any replies, we will put them out on TorahAnytime.com. My email address, Rabbi Kelati, that's Kelaty, at gmail.com. Rabbi Kelati, Kelaty, at gmail.com. Right, we want to hear those stories. We want to inspire other people with your beautiful stories. I'm sure there's loads of stories out there. Let's hear from you. Okay, let's move on. Now let's talk about the opposite, the polar opposite of people who had nothing and they were stretched. Let's look at Perek Lamed Vav, Pasuk Chaf Zayin. והנשיאים הביאו את אבני השוהם ואת אבני המילואים לאפוד ולחושן. The princes of the tribes, what did they bring? Everyone was bringing contributions. They bought the shoham stones and the miluim stones, precious stones. There's something we need to mention about the Nesiim. They made a seemingly, I put the word seemingly in inverted commas, they made a seemingly magnanimous gesture. What was their gesture towards the building project of the Mishkan? They said to Moshe Rabbeinu, let everyone else donate. Let everyone bring the gold, the silver, the copper, the materials. Let everyone give what they can give. And if there's a shortfall, or rather, when there's a shortfall, whatever it is, we will bridge that gap. We will take care of that shortfall. Now, if you think about that, that is an amazing gesture. Can you imagine if they said at a fundraising dinner, we need £80,000 to build a school. It's not a lot of money to build a school. Maybe it is a lot of money. We want to build a purpose-built school from the ground up. We're going to break down whatever's there on the site. We're going to rebuild. We need 80k. Who's going to help us? You see somebody pledging £1,000, somebody £500, somebody pledging £2,000. Then somebody gets up and says, whatever you're missing, I'm going to bring it up to that £80,000 mark. Doesn't matter if you raise £10,000 or £100, whatever it is, I'm going to make up the shortfall. What will we say to that fellow? We'd say, Hazak u'Baruch, Shkoyach. What a tremendous gesture. We'd shake his hand, we'd hug him, we'd say, we don't have to worry anymore. You've just secured our future. We'd give him a full page in the fundraising brochure. We'd put him up on a pedestal. We'd name the school after him. So how come in the Torah it doesn't speak very positively about the Nesiim? In fact, Chazal tell us that they were spoken about in a disparaging way. In other words, it wasn't such a good thing, because they in the scheme of things, when they donated these stones, that was like the end of the project, and it wasn't such a good thing. So in previous years we've given different answers about this. I want to speak about one particular answer, and this really highlights a preconception that a lot of people have. People think that however noble the action is, that's how praiseworthy the action is. So in other words, if you do an act that is noble, or you pledge something which is very noble, that gives you carte blanche, that gives you any excuse to do what you like and to act how you like. I'll tell you what I mean. Of course it was a noble action. To pledge money, that's an amazing action. But for them to say, nah, we'll wait till the end. Let everyone else give, and we'll give at the end. That's not right. A person should jump at the chance and give straight away. You don't wait till the end. You don't become the bookend, propping everything else up. You take the mitzvah and you jump. Look how the other people jumped. Look how the simple people jumped, who had nothing. They jumped. They got the goods. They got the talents. They got the siyata d'shmaya. As opposed to the Nesiim, who should have known better. They were the ones who ended up at the end of the pile. They were the ones who ended up criticized, because they were the ones who waited. And Chazal actually call it a form of laziness. No matter how tremendous and magnanimous the gesture is, if you delay, you are called lazy. You're not called somebody who does a tremendous mitzvah, he's waiting a little bit. He's called lazy. So I want to extend this a little bit, if I can. I want to say that if a person does something that really on paper it's a fantastic thing, that he shouldn't use that as something to wield against other people. I'll tell you what I'm thinking of. Thinking of one specific example. You know, people who have been given by Hashem vast finances, and they want to do the right thing. There are many people who are blessed with money. It's a great bracha. It's also a great test, but it's a great bracha to be blessed with money. And there are people out there who have money and they do give, but they give on their own terms. They make you come in at certain hours. Again, I'm not talking about anybody specifically, and I'm just literally giving this as an example. They make you jump through hoops because they're doing a great mitzvah. And I'm doing it myself. So therefore, I call the shots. So you have to jump through all those hoops before you get to my kitty of money, my pot of gold, and then I'll give you the money. Now, that can't be right, according to what we've learned here about the Nesiim. They also had a lot of money. They also could afford to make that or suggest that particular gesture. But because they delayed, because they did it on their own terms, perhaps that's why they were punished? Because they did it on their own terms? So if we are in a position where we can give Is it correct if we do it on our own terms? Is it correct if we make people do all these things before they get to where they need to be to receive this gesture or this money, whatever it is? Or do we try and make it easy for them? Or do we not dictate the rules? I think what we need to take out of this is that we don't make the rules. Hashem makes the rules. Hashem gave you what you need to give. It doesn't have to be money. It could be anything that a person has more than his fellow has. And that his fellow feels beholden now. That he needs this thing. This, whatever commodity it could be. Could be a physical commodity. Could be an intangible commodity. Could be wisdom even. So do we have the right to lord it over somebody else just because we've got something that they don't have? To me at least, this is what I learned from this incident that I'm going to see it. We have to humble ourselves. We have to jump and do the right thing. And don't do it on our own terms just because Hashem has put us in the position where we are the benefactor. And we're going to finish now with another example of Chacham Lev. And it's a story. It's quite a famous story, and you may have heard it before. Even I might have said it before in one of my shurim, but it's worth saying it because it brings out this point very well. Many years ago, there's a Rebbe called Reb Zusha, and Reb Zusha had a daughter who got engaged, and it came time that they had to get her a wedding dress. Now, in those days, you didn't just walk into any, a shop and buy a wedding dress off the shelf. In fact, even nowadays, there are many shops that tailor-make wedding dresses rather. That tailor-make wedding dresses, although they're not very cheap. But many stores now would give you off-the-shelf beautiful, beautiful wedding dresses. And there's even gemachim nowadays, who a kala will only use her wedding dress once, presumably. So what does she do? She gives it to a gemach. It's a tremendous, tremendous, praiseworthy thing. These holy women who give away their wedding dress should be praised and should get a big zechut from this. To give a wedding dress to somebody who can't afford it, it's a tremendous mitzvah. They should be praised to the highest level. A wonderful way to start a marriage, by the way. Anyway, in those days, you had to get a wedding dress tailor-made. And of course, it's not going to be cheap. So, Reb Zusha and his wife scrimped and saved, and they bought the material, they took it to the seamstress, and she made the dress. And it came to the time, now the wedding dress was ready. So, Reb Zusha's Rebbetzin went to the seamstress to pick up the dress, and of course Reb Zusha's waiting, his daughter's waiting, and the Rebbetzin comes in without the dress. So Reb Zusha says, what happened? It wasn't ready? His wife said, no, it was ready. So where's the dress? She said, sit down, I have to tell you what happened. What happened? She said, I went there and I saw the seamstress, she was giving me the dress and she looked zerbrochen, she looked broken. So I said to her, what happened? She said, look, I'll be honest with you, I've also got a daughter who's getting married. And although I'm in the business of making dresses, I cannot afford to make her a dress. I mean, the material was expensive, and the labor, she never had any time, she was too busy trying to, each dress she made was in order to put food on the table. Who knows what the story was? But Reb Zusha's wife, what did she do? She looked at the seamstress, she said, you know what? We'll find another way. You keep the wedding dress, you give it to your daughter. And that's the story she came back and told her husband. And her husband said, that is a tremendous, tremendous action you've just done. But there's a problem. Reb Zushi's wife said, well, what problem? Reb Zushi said, she spent hours upon hours making this dress. You commissioned her to make this dress. Now she gave the dress to her daughter. But you didn't pay her for the time that she made the dress. That was unaccounted for. The fact that she had the dress now and she gave it to her daughter, that's one thing. But did you pay her for a time? And maybe he even might have said, did you pay her for the material that you commissioned? So his wife said, look, what do you want? I gave her the dress. I should go and pay her? The Rebbe said, yes. And that's what happened. On top of not getting the dress for his daughter, they ended up going back and paying the seamstress for her time and maybe even for the material back to the seamstress. Can you imagine such an act? Such an act is not simply tzedakah. Such an act is chacham leiv. It's the chokhmah that comes from the heart. It's not looking at the situation as, you know what, I've done my job and that's it. I don't need to extend myself. I don't need to stretch to myself. I've got my daf yomi. I've got my shir. I've got my mitzvot. I need to go and build a yeshiva? I do enough already. You ever heard this? People say this. I give enough tzedakah. I learn enough Torah. Sometimes people say this. This is a terrible thing to say. Nobody gives enough tzedakah. How do you define enough tzedakah? And certainly, can you say you've learned enough Torah? I learn enough Torah already. I don't need to learn anymore. Who can say they've learned Kol Torah Kula? All the years we spent in yeshiva, the more we learn, the more we realize what ignoramuses we are. I can speak for myself. The more I learn, and there's so much that I haven't learned. What I learned is so minuscule. And any Avreich will tell you the same. Any Ben Torah will tell you the same. Not that I'm a Ben Torah. I'm only scratching the surface. But the Bnei Torah will tell you there's an infinite amount to learn. We'll never finish learning Torah. So we can't look at what we've done and say, this is it, this is the be-all and end-all. We can't look at the fact that we've done this gesture of giving the seamstress the dress and say, that's it. We have to be a chacham leiv. We have to look at things in an objective way and break out of that mold. Here it's on all of us. We'll always find an excuse to do more. Just like Reb Zusha and his wife. They didn't need an excuse not to give the correct amount, not to give that woman, that poor seamstress, the money for her time. They didn't need an excuse to run away and say, that's that. All of us should go out and actively find the mitzvot that we need to do. We should all stretch ourselves like the Ponevezher Rav, and like the Bobov Rav, and like all the other tremendous Chachamim and the doers. We mentioned Reb David Ryan, Sora Shnira, all the great people. We should stretch ourselves. We should find people who will tell us what we're capable of. And Hashem should give us the wisdom and the wherewithal to be able to take on that task and push ourselves out the box. And then when we push ourselves out the box, maybe we'll be in that wider circle with Mashiach Tzidkenu and the Binyan Ariel. May it happen in our times. Amen v'amen. Thank you for coming and thank you for listening.